Maajid Nawaz, for those of you who don't know him, and I pray to Allah that you guys never encounter him or his works, he is someone who was a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir. He was quite outspoken and very well known within Hizb ut-Tahrir. He went to Egypt with two other members from the Hizb. They were arrested for espionage and trying to overthrow the government, I believe. And they spent 3.5 years in Egyptian prisons. In the prisons, Amnesty regarded them to be prisoners of conscience, and through a number of lobbying and intervention of human rights groups, Maajid Nawaz and the two other brothers from the Hizb, they were released. Upon their release, Maajid Nawaz was still a member of Hizb ut-Tahrir. He spoke at one of their conferences. He spoke at one of the big demos. But then he went on to, I believe, BBC Newsnight, where they did a special exclusive report of a former Islamist who had kind of had an epiphany and awoken to the mistakes and the flaws of his former way of thinking. And then he came out, and this was his first public kind of renouncing of political Islam and Hizb ut-Tahrir and the notion of khilaf and all this kind of stuff. And he basically said that, look, what I was upon was very hateful, was very divisive, it was very toxic. Um, and whilst I still believe that the oppressive rulers must be accounted and removed, this methodology and what I was upon was absolutely wrong. It was un-Islamic, it's very divisive, and it's problematic. That was his first public statement. Then from there on, it just went from batil to open kufr. And I mean, he is someone who has openly admitted that he consumes alcohol. He is someone who has publicly said that he gambles. He was 2 years or 2.5 years ago in Ramadan. He was found filmed in a strip club, drunk, trying to harass and grope a strip dancer. But yani, these are all private things which he is happily has publicized. But this kind of notion that there is no such thing as an Islamic government, there's no such thing as an Islamic caliphate, there's no such thing as capital punishment for the one who publicly apostatizes in an Islamic government and after due process remains upon that position. There is no punishment for the one who commits sodomy in public after 4 eyewitnesses have seen the act of penetration in an Islamic government or in an Islamic state. There is verses of the Quran which are outdated. The story of Lut alayhi salam only applies to criminality and male rape, not homosexuality. That the rules pertaining to inheritance between men and women has to be revised so it's gender equal. That was contextual to that time. This entire narrative of historicizing the Quran, saying that certain ayat of the Quran are outdated or needs revisiting or needs new commentary. Yeah, he is upon all of that. And that's not to mention his nefarious links to the Tea Party movement, to the white conservatives, to the right-wing groups, to Zionists who fund his organization, who pay his salary. That's not to mention his obsession with persisting that Muslim women should not wear the niqab, Muslim women should not wear the hijab, Muslim girls should not wear the hijab. Yet he has absolutely no problem paying 10, 20 pounds to a half-naked stripper drunk in Ramadan. But he wants to see our sisters without their hijab and their niqab. He's all for free speech. He's all for free speech and religious freedom until a Muslim advocates for the Sharia in the Muslim majority world via peaceful means. He's all for free speech until a Muslim says that he believes that homosexuality is an abomination. So Maajid Nawaz, his organization Quilliam Foundation, who also has another nefarious individual called Dr. Osama Hassan, who was of who was a very prominent Salafi speaker in the 90s, who is the son of Sheikh Suhaib Hassan, the prominent Salafi scholar of the UK, who I had a debate with on BBC Sunday Morning Live. You can just Google Dilly Hussain,
I've seen that. That was the first time.
right? Where he said that, you can shorten your fasts to whatever your body tells you until it's hard, until and then I had to tell him live on TV that Allah's mercy and justice is greater than your progressive thinking. And if you call me an extremist for believing this, then look into a scholar called Sheikh Suhaib Hassan, your father, who believes in the Sharia, who believes in not shortening the fast, who believes in Khilafah, who believes in jihad, who believes in the very things that you and your organization go and you go and label other Muslims as extremists and threat to the British establishment. The very same things which you label others for, your dad believes in. This is pertaining to Dr. Osama Hassan, and I hope he listens to this. And I hope that if you're going to label and you're going to provide the media and the police and venues with lists of organizations of speakers and du'at and ulama and activists to no platform us, that your father's name must be included in this list as well. And this is the kind of stuff that these guys do in Quilliam Foundation. They normalize kufr. They don't even normalize shad opinions. It's not even about that anymore. They literally normalize kufr, right? Under this umbrella of free progressive thinking, that universal human rights dictates all. Times have changed. And because times have changed, the Quran has to change, right? Because times have changed, the default isn't the age of empires and religious scriptures. Universal human rights, Islam has to conform to this, that Islam has to undergo a reformation like Christianity did. Literally, these guys have said this. Maajid Nawaz has come number of times live on TV and said that Islam is yet to undergo a liberal secular reformation which harmonizes Islam and its scripture away from medieval dogma. So Najis Nawaz, believing that liberal democracy is okay, that Muslims should fight, is the least of the very least, because God-fearing, pious, devout Muslims believe this. So that's nothing. Him being part of the Liberal Democrats is nothing either, because we have Muslims who are part of other political parties and the British Armed Forces and even Zionist lobbies, right? What makes the Quilliam Foundation and others like Sarah Khan, this women's rights activist who was formerly part of We Inspire, but now she is the Commissioner for Countering Extremism. She dedicated 7 pages to 5 pillars, and myself, respect to her. Fiaz Mughal from Faith Matters, right? Dilwar Hussain, not me. Dilwar Hussain from an organization called New Horizons of British Islam. Quilliam Foundation. All these guys, they make up what is known as the deformist movement within the UK. Some of these guys were formerly with the Hizb, others were ex-Salafis, others were from IFE or Jamaati Islam, others were from Deobandi backgrounds, but the most prominent of these deformists is obviously Maajid Nawaz, who was formerly with the Hizb. There's another irrelevant non-entity, but I'm sure I'll give him a shout out because it'll give him a bit of a sense of self-importance. It's a guy called Rashad Ali. He was also formerly with the Hizb, but he's a full-time charlatan. There's Dr. Osama Hassan, who is very well versed in Islamic theology and the Quran and stuff like this. He debated Yasir Qadhi on evolution. He was obviously a former Salafi. Dilwar Hussain is a Bengali academic, but he's also upon this kind of reformist agenda. And literally, what these guys want to do, I mean, they have taken it a step further. It's not even about now Muslims not calling for Sharia or Muslims not wanting X, Y, and Z services in the UK. They are literally about changing Islam top to bottom. Everything that is remotely orthodox, they want to change this. whether it be gender relations, whether it be the capital punishments and the penal code, whether it be the political concepts within Islam, whether it be the notion of jihad, whether it be the notion of a khilafah. They want to change the issue of men and allowing 4 wives. They want to change, inheritance laws. They want to change the way women dress. They literally want to change so many forms of normative Islam, which has been part of our tradition for 1400 years. These are just some of the things, brothers, that I've mentioned. Like these guys, Maajid, Nawaz, and others, they've come on live TV. I mean, he's come to Australia even, and they've come live on TV and they said, "Look, man, we're secular liberals, and we're silenced, we're censored. If you give us a voice, we will eventually become the mainstream, but we're silenced because the Islamists and the Salafists and the conservatives, they're so loud. These guys could not hide their opposition to mainstream Islam. That first they began with the Hizb, the Salafis, the Muslim Brotherhood type movements and charities, then the Deobandis, then they went after the Sufi Barelvis as well, saying that this notion of Gustaki Rasul, this notion that you can't curse the Prophet ﷺ, yeah, this is backward and medieval and is proliferating violence and normalizing violence. These guys have, first and foremost, they have absolutely no following or support within the grassroots in the United Kingdom. In fact, there's a saying that if you guys ever visit the UK, you may hear this. There are two things which unite all groups of Muslims in the United Kingdom. That's Israel and Quilliam Foundation. And that's all I have to say about these guys.
I remember there was when Maajid Nawaz was in jail. There was that he was in jail with someone. That guy, he came out of jail. He was pro like caliphate. I forgot his name. I think it was like Penfound or something. One of them, I think.
It was brother Dr. Reza Pankhurst.
Yeah, Pankhurst. He was like
Dr. Reza Pankhurst, and it was our brother Yahya Nesbit. MashaAllah, both our brothers, they remained very steadfast upon the deen. Brother Yahya Nisbet, he's the media spokesman of Hizb ut-Tahrir Britain. Dr. Reza Pankhurst, he's published 2 books on Islamic political movements and the challenges of establishing a khilafah in the 21st century. He was a lecturer at King's College, I believe. These guys remained steadfast upon their dawah, and alhamdulillah, they progressed and remained leaders within their respective circles. But obviously Maajid Nawaz obviously didn't. And these guys, they live for their egos. These guys, narcissism is something which I would argue, many people in the public arena has to have a level of ego and narcissism. But alhamdulillah, those who are God-fearing and have a consciousness and awareness, they try to obviously, tackle that and address that. But guys like Maajid Nawaz, these guys live for TV interviews. They live for newspaper splashes. They live, like Maajid Nawaz has a radio show on LBC, Leading Britain's Conversation. It's one of the biggest radio stations in the UK. And every week, he's talking about Islamists, Muslim women, hijab, niqab. He is always slating the deen of Islam and Muslims. And like I said, the Quilliam Foundation, Maajid Nawaz, Sarah Khan, her Commission for Countering Extremism, Fiaz Mughal and Faith Matters, Dilwar Hussain and New Horizons, and that joker Rashad Ali, all of these guys, they are non-entities. Wallahi, they are non-entities. Come and walk the streets of any major city and town in the UK which has big Muslim populations. Whether it's my hometown of Bedford, Luton, London, Manchester, Birmingham, all those big major towns and cities up north and the Midlands, they either do not know who these guys are or they reject them like the Dajjal. Alhamdulillah. These guys are nobodies. But they have such massive platforms. Sorry. Just one last point. These guys, they have such massive platforms. But look at the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That these guys, Quilliam Foundation and others and their ilk, they have access to all the national newspapers. They are nearly invited to every single, prime time news show. Yet, with all that platform, with all that resources, they still remain barely in the peripheries.
Alhamdulillah.
Barely. That even that is giving them too much. And this is a blessing from Allah. That these guys, yani, with the little resources that Muslim groups and movements have, whether it be our Facebook pages or our Twitter accounts or our blogs or whatever we have, alhamdulillah, we are still loved and respected and received with warmth and accountability from the ummah and our communities here. Right? Whereas these guys, with all their access, they've not made any progress in what they claim to have. They love the money, they love themselves, and they love hearing their own voices, and they love hearing what their masters in Downing Street say to them. They're chaiwalas. These guys are colonial tea boys. That's what they are. So they're just on a very good payroll.
I agree, because even before Maajid Nawaz, became very liberal and secular, even with the Hizb, apparently the Hizb wouldn't give him leadership positions because they saw in him traits of wanting that spotlight, and essentially even the problem becomes where, like, for example, for liberal kind of non-Muslims that just want to go about life and secular in their view, they see Maajid Nawaz as appealing, right? So when you get a guy or a devout Muslim kind of talking against Maajid Nawaz, they suddenly assume that you're against freedom and having rights or anything, and suddenly they paint this view that Islam is very backward naturally because you're talking against someone, because they idolize Maajid Nawaz to the point where, okay, he represents all the values of the West. And I guess I don't think Muslims are hate, if you kind of take into account what Islam has to say and what the West has to say. Obviously there are differences, but for the most part we do want to get on with life. We
have to get on with life.
Yeah, exactly. So when essentially you have Maajid Nawaz appealing or talking about those values of the West, and then someone like me or even yourself come along and a non-Muslim sees that they're vehement against Maajid Nawaz's discourse.
But Maajid Nawaz tells people that anyone who's against him, who holds very normative, like quote unquote moderate Islamic views, even, is an extremist and is partisan to groups such as.
People are beginning to start seeing through that. That may have been the case in the early days, and yeah, he has his core supporters who are of not just a liberal background, but a very muscular liberal background. And the vast majority of Quilliam Foundation supporters are not actually liberals. It's the right wing. It's the right wingers. Yeah, it's the conservatives, the right wingers, the white supremacists. Those are the core of his supporters. But yes, with it amongst them, you also get white liberals. However, what you have to understand is, yes, once they're constantly hearing Maajid Nawaz and his ilk and others, and obviously amongst them as well, you've got this other thing where the British government and the press love normalizing the Qadiani movement in the UK as well. They love doing that as well.
I've seen that as well here.
Yeah, like presenting them as like the model Muslim community. But look, non-Muslims who have grown up with Muslims, with Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Indian, Arab, Turkish, Kurdish, black neighbors who happen to be Muslim, they know what Muslims believe in and what they don't believe in. They know that their neighbors or their friends, their peers, or whatever it may be, are not what Maajid Nawaz says. However, there are huge numbers of non-Muslims who have never really interacted with Muslims on an everyday basis. They haven't. And it is those guys who have and can easily be influenced by what Maajid Nawaz says, because essentially when he's talking about freedom of speech, freedom of sexuality, universal human rights, progressive thinking, and all that kind of stuff, is ticking all the right boxes for the liberal. However, once they start realizing that, hold up, this guy Maajid and his friends, they are actually not just a minority, literally there just seem to be a handful of people. What then happens is that those non-Muslims will go on to research, and I've met non-Muslims who have done this, by the way. I've met non-Muslims who said, you know what, we used to listen to this guy called Maajid Nawaz. I know what, we thought he was fantastic. Everything that he was saying in his radio show on the TV, I agreed with everything. Until I realized that he actually is rejected by everyone in the Muslim community, and his organization has absolutely no ground has no say in the grassroots perspective, from the grassroots level in the Muslim community. And when we found out why, we found out that these guys are essentially just peddling what the government is telling them, because it's the government that pays their salaries, right? But yes, they have a core and growing number of liberal, white, non-Muslim supporters, because essentially they are saying what essentially they believe in as their aqidah and their worldview and their way of life. However, if you continue having Muslim activists, writers, thinkers, du'at, who have opportunities on their platforms and mainstream platforms to convey the compassionate, merciful, and comprehensive perspective of Islam, then inshallah the likes of Maajid Nawaz and Quilliam Foundation will never ever make edgeway in the Muslim community in the UK or anywhere else in the world. So, because the way I see it as, if with all their resources and their accesses, this is how little they've achieved, and with the little in terms of resources that the Muslim groups have, the different Muslim groups have in the UK, and the amount we've managed to achieve and preserve and protect, alhamdulillah, if we carry on with this kind of ratio, Quilliam will be finished. Quilliam are dead. They don't exist. Quilliam Foundation and Maajid Nawaz and these guys, they don't exist in the Muslim community. They never have, they never will. They don't exist in the Muslim community. I'm still waiting to know a single mosque in the last 10 years that has hosted them for an event. I don't know a single mosque that has invited. We have more than 1,500 mosques in the United Kingdom, right? Not a single one has hosted Maajid Nawaz or the Quilliam Foundation, right? Because as soon as he probably sends his the first sentence he'll utter, there'll probably be an uncle with his Bata sandals or his singla chasing him out. It won't happen. It just won't happen.
How we deal with it.
You understand? So these guys, they don't exist in the Muslim community. They exist to feed on the fears of our non-Muslim neighbors and our friends and our colleagues. That's what they survive and live for. They survive and live to peddle a particular narrative which demonizes and criminalizes Islam and Muslims. They survive and their existence as it stands is solely to present Islam and its adherents in a particular light, to perpetuate this fear and suspicion of Islamophobia that non-Muslims already have about Muslims. Those who have never met Muslims or interacted with them. And this is what they're there for. They're not here for the ummah. They're not here for the community. They never have been. They never have been. They're there for news shows, sound bites, the media, to go and speak in parliament and having secret meetings with their paymasters, providing lists, blacklists of Muslim organizations and figures to media outlets not to invite them on. You know they do this? They provide lists to the police. They provide lists to media outlets and say, you know what, don't invite these people. Don't platform these guys. Don't give them a venue. They're Islamists. They're extremists. They believe in this. They don't, their thinking and their ideology is no different to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. This is what these guys do for a living. This is how they make their earning. I don't know how they sleep at night.
And what I realize is that, sorry to cut you off, to add to what you just said, I realized that they're always in their own echo chamber. So Maajid Nawaz would go on to, Sam Harris podcast, because Sam Harris has such a big following. They'll have their own conversation about Islamism. And then Maajid Nawaz will just state, I had this chat with this, Muslim who's, high in the community, high ranks in the community, and I was able to turn him over to Quilliam. Like, there's no real actual dialogue.
He's never mentioned a name. These are imaginary friends that he's had, probably from when he's had a strong session the night before. He's imagining people,
and he's pretty much like, I haven't seen him ever dialogue, with someone within, Hezbollah Tahrir, for example, or do an actual dialogue or a debate or anything. And even it's so weird, like, because I see a lot of media that comes out of UK. There's all these weird debates. I remember there was like, is Islam a peaceful religion? And Hirsi Ali and Maajid Nawaz was there. It was like these weird guests they have that are pro-Islam. I don't know.
But you see, the thing is they never get like someone like TJ Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad. Like you don't see these like big giants of the Muslim community and of like Muslim intellectuals. Like it's always this straw manning,
and it's echo chamber. They get like people they think should represent Islam. It's like a agenda.
No, but the likes of Abdul Hakim Murad and Sheikh Akram Nadwi and others, these guys are not media people. And I don't think, and I don't believe, from my understanding, from knowing their students and people close to them, I don't think they are people who liken media attention. However, just to address a point that you mentioned, the reason why you've never seen Maajid Nawaz on a platform with anyone else is because, generally speaking, there's a no platform policy that a number of Muslim groups have with the Quilliam Foundation. Me appearing on the BBC Sunday Morning live show with Osama Hassan happened to be a coincidence, which I found out on the day. Many Muslim groups and movements in the UK, they refuse to share a platform with Quilliam Foundation.
Okay, that's good because it kind of disassociates from the
especially Maajid Nawaz. But that said, there have been, I believe, Abdullah Andalusi, our dear brother Abdullah Andalusi, he's had a brief interaction with Maajid Nawaz on a show that came on BBC Three. The Muslim Council of Britain, which is on paper the largest umbrella organisation in the UK, their media spokesman Miqdad Varsi, he shared a platform and spoke with Maajid Nawaz on Channel 4. It wasn't a great interview, to be honest, though brother Miqdad Varsi does do great work in correcting Islamophobic headlines in the newspapers. That particular interview he did with Maajid Nawaz on Channel 4 wasn't great at all. But so there may be one or two organizations who share platforms with Quilliam Foundation. It's even got to the extent where the mainstream media, and I've heard this many times, that they will not even tell the other Muslim spokesperson or contributor that they've got someone from Quilliam until the day, or until just before the show starts. And many brothers and sisters have walked away. They're like, no, thank you.
I think this is going to be one of our biggest episodes as well. And Raf's got a cricket game he's got to go to soon. But regardless, I think this episode was really insightful because